Well, good afternoon and welcome to H360 Live. My name is Dave Duplay. I'm joined here in the studio with my friend and colleague from Healthy 360, Miss Courtland Long. Courtland, good to see you once again today.
Good to see you, Dave.
So the second show this afternoon, busy day for us.
It is a very busy day, but a good day.
A good day, and we're talking about something that's near and dear to our hearts, and that's dementia and Alzheimer's. As you know, Courtland, my mother is an Alzheimer's patient as well as your uncle. So this is a topic that we're not just talking about casually. It affects both of us in a significant way. And we've got a great second half for you today. Dr. Friedhoff from Axovant Sciences is going to be in the studio, and we're going to be talking about a therapy they have coming to market called RVT-101. It's in clinical testing right now, but this is a really exciting time for this company and in particular for this drug. And Dr. Friedhoff is an expert when it comes to bringing these kinds of drugs to market. He's not only leading the development, clinical development at Axovant Sciences, but he also led the development of Aricept, which is the most widely used and current treatment for Alzheimer's disease today. So he knows a tremendous amount information about this topic. We're going to be talking to him about where this product is, when we can expect it to market, and all the exciting things that are on the horizon for Axovant Sciences. So I can't wait to get him in the studio, but Courtland, first we've got some health tips that we want to review.
Yes, these health tips are very much in line with our show today, and they're all about preserving your memory as you age. So Dave, I think we'll just jump right in. And health tip number one is engage your brain. So just like physical exercise is good for your brain and your body, mental exercise is also good for your memory. So you can try to do things like play a game of cards, join a book club, or even play some of those brain training apps that are so popular out today. Any mentally challenging activity is going to help keep your mind a little bit sharper.
It will, and there are so many apps out there, right? Downloading them on your smartphone, having them accessible on your iPad, they're all over. So take advantage of some of those, and most of them are free.
Yeah.
So they don't cost you anything, and again, keeping that brain stimulated is really important. Well, the second tip is staying social. And this is not only good for Alzheimer's and dementia patients, but for everyone, as a matter of fact, because social isolation, especially in Alzheimer's patients, can really be devastating. And so getting out, making sure that if you're a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia, you're getting them out, you're getting them in a social environment and getting them interactive. And Llewellyn Barkin was just in here, and we were talking about the early stage center over at Caring Kind, and that's really what it's designed to do. It's getting the people out of their house. It's getting them socially engaged in activities with others. So important.
Yeah, I think staying social is very important so that you don't fall into the decline any faster than you might. I think that going out, seeing your friends, having new experiences throughout the day also helps to keep your mind a little bit sharper. So tip number 3 is to use memory tricks. And so every time you learn a new name or a new word, try to say it out loud to really seal it in your brain. Pair that word or name with a picture. So if you learn someone's name like Dave, and I say it out loud and I see your face, I'm pairing it with a picture as well. Or you can also try to set reminders in your phone. Now, this is my favorite. I'm always setting reminders in my phone because so many things are happening throughout the day. So those are some really great tips to try to use some memory tricks.
Yeah, Courtland, and there's another thing, music and memory. There's something behind that. I went to the premiere opening of a film called Alive Inside, and where they were taking iPods and putting music of the person's generation on the iPod and putting those headphones on the person and watching them come alive. I mean, individuals that hadn't spoken a word in over 6 months or a year, putting those headphones on and them hearing the music of their generation, things that they may have listened to when they were a young child, and all of a sudden they start singing the words to those songs. Really inspirational. And in fact, after watching it, I ran out and I bought my mother one. And kind of a little funny thing, my dad's the caregiver, and he put the headphones on and turned the iPod on and said, "Dave, it's not working." He called me up and I said, "Well, Dad, did you charge it?" "Oh, we've got to charge it." So, you know, you have to read the manual, but
Yeah.
it works. And my mom loves it, and she loves sitting there listening to music in the evening with her headphones on. So that is, as well as memory tricks, it works really well.
Yeah, I know that movie was very emotional, and a lot of people were just overcome with emotion and joy at seeing their loved ones come back to life after hearing that music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, we've got a great show, but Courtland, you know, we sent the interns out in the streets of New York to see what our New Yorkers know about dementia, Alzheimer's, and some of the things associated with caregiving. You want to watch the video?
I would love to.
Okay, guys, please roll it for us.
Do you know anyone who has dementia?
My grandfather had it.
You got it.
Yeah, about 4 years ago.
Not directly right now. I have friends whose spouses have had dementia.
Not clinically. No, I don't.
My grandma
Your
did.
grandma?
Yeah.
My grandpa, my dad's father, has it.
What are some ways you think you can help strengthen your memory and prevent dementia?
Oh, well, there's a lot of brain games being advertised now.
To me, it seems like crossword puzzles, math games. Also, like staying active socially.
See pictures of your family, be reminded of who they are on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that really helps as well.
Doing things like crossword, keeping your mind active.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next question is, do you think interacting with others is beneficial for people with dementia?
Yeah, to me it seems like it. I worry that sometimes that we've gone ahead and institutionalized people with, dementia, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, etc., to their detriment.
Well, I felt like when my grandfather had it, when he was alone,
Yeah.
it like took more control, but when he was interacting, it kept him more active.
Exactly.
Yes, I mean, clearly one of the most damaging things for people who are growing old is social isolation.
She just wanted to try and keep doing things herself, which I think
Okay.
is a good thing.
Okay.
Although it didn't work out all the time, which sometimes could cause problems. So that's why we also try to be there for her a lot.
Exactly.
I guess so, because you'll see, keep using your brain, and certain parts of your brain and be using more. So.
Exactly. Do you think that memory tricks such as using Post-it notes and then sticking it like on your fridge or your closet to kind of like help you remember things, do you think that would kind of help in the sense of preventing dementia?
Maybe not preventing, but helping out in daily activities, daily life. I mean, even I use them. Everybody uses them.
Exactly.
We all need reminders.
Yeah.
Well, she would just forget where stuff is. And if you would do that, she would just see it again.
I guess if you need help to remember things, then visual reminders will help.
I mean, we always joke that when we start putting our keys in the refrigerator, then we need to put up the sticky notes, and then something would really be wrong. But I think there are all kinds of tricks that people talk about for early dementia.
The only way I'm able to live my life effectively is with a great calendar.
Yeah.
So if here I am and I'm saying that in my 30s, I presume someone in their 50s, 60s, or 70s also would need that to stay organized and connected.
Well, Courtland, what'd you think?
That was an excellent video. It's really interesting to see the mix of who knew someone who has dementia and who didn't.
Yeah, it's about half and half, but what struck me is even those that weren't closely affiliated with the disease, really, they know a lot about it.
They sure did. So there was that one woman who actually mentioned about social isolation. Our interns don't go out and read the tips to people. They ask them, what do you know about helping someone who has dementia? And the one woman said, staying active and out with your friends is really beneficial.
Yeah, and the memory tricks, I think, came into play there as well, right? The use of Post-it notes and scheduling and really paying close attention to, helping people through their day with a tight schedule and some of the memory tricks, really important stuff.
Yeah, of course, our New Yorkers did not disappoint yet again.
They did not. Full of information. Our interns did a great job. Well, Courtland, our favorite time of the show, Dr. Friedhoff is in. And before we start our Q&A with Dr. Friedhoff, I just want to go through a couple of pieces of information on Alzheimer's and dementia. Well, dementia is not a disease. It's kind of an umbrella term, if you will, for the term of symptoms caused by many memory loss or confusion or other dementia disorders. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause. Dementia is not an inevitable part of getting old. While it's true that most people with dementia are over 65, just because you're getting old does not necessarily mean that dementia is on the horizon, or Alzheimer's for that matter. And dementia is a global issue. It's a common myth that it's only found in the Western world, but that certainly is not true. It's a global issue and one that really needs to be addressed. So, Dr. Friedhoff, I'm so glad to have you here in the studio with us today. We've got so many things to ask you, and it's such an exciting time for your company. So let's jump right in.
Yeah, so I work for Axovant Sciences. We call ourselves a dementia solutions company. We're committed to developing new treatments for all aspects of dementia, both the cognitive and the behavioral disabilities that come with that illness. And we have one drug that's quite advanced in clinical trials. We believe it's only one confirmatory clinical trial away from a package that will support approval by the FDA and other regulatory agencies all over the world.
So this drug that you're referring to is RVT-101. So can you share with us a little bit of how this medication works?
Sure. RVT-101 is used on top of the most widely used treatment for Alzheimer's disease, that is donepezil hydrochloride, also known as Aricept. That's the brand name. And it works in a way that's quite similar to Aricept. Aricept works by inhibiting an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine. So patients with dementia and with Alzheimer's disease in particular have less acetylcholine in their brain than they need. And that leads, at least in part, to the problems with memory and thinking. Aricept works by preserving it in the brain, keeping it from being broken down. RVT-101 works by causing the brain to release more of it and generate more of it. So they work very well together. You can think of it like a bathtub. So if the bathtub is full of acetylcholine and that's your brain, the Aricept works by clogging up the drain, keep the acetylcholine from draining out. RVT-101 works by adding more to the bathtub so as to maintain the levels. And one might think, well, why not just give more Aricept? Now, the problem with that is that Aricept has its effects all over the body. And so there are limits on how much you can increase acetylcholine outside the brain. It causes problems. RVT-101 works only in the brain, so it raises acetylcholine only in the brain.
Now, Doc, you're quite the expert in this area, and I'm interested to hear how you got interested in the area of Alzheimer's and dementia in this field.
So as a young medical student, I worked in the VA hospital here in Manhattan, and I was exposed to a fair number of patients who were hospitalized with dementia. Back in those days, the term Alzheimer's disease wasn't really used very much. People just thought of, they called it senile dementia. You got old, you just couldn't think as well. And it was viewed as kind of a normal part of aging. I think partly because there was nothing to be done about it. So there was no reason to classify it or to think of it as a disease. After that, I joined the pharmaceutical industry, and I was asked to start an operation to get new drugs approved by a company that had never gotten any of its own drugs approved. They just sold other companies' drugs. And I looked around to see what it was they had that I thought could help patients. And one of the compounds I found was this drug for Alzheimer's disease. It had been in just a few very early studies in healthy volunteers, and I thought that it had some real potential to help patients. So the company was, provided a budget, and we hired some people, and 5 years and 9 months later, Aricept got approved by the FDA and shortly thereafter by regulators all over the world, and that's how I really came to be deeply involved in dementia research.
Now, when you say you tested this in healthy patients, what specifically does that mean?
So when you do drug development, the first group, generally, if the drug is reasonably safe, as donepezil or Aricept is, the first studies are done in healthy volunteers. And the reason we do that is because we're looking very carefully for side effects. And when you give a drug to people who are healthy, it's much easier to see the side effects than if you give it to someone who's already sick and has medical problems that may be changing over time. So those first couple studies were done in healthy volunteers. They were done outside the US. We actually repeated them in the United States just to be absolutely sure.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all drugs cause side effects, so you want to identify a well-tolerated dose that you think will help patients. So you increase the dose until you start to see minor side effects, and then you stop.
So let's talk for a minute about clinical research. And I believe that the study behind RVT-101 is referred to as the Mindset Study. So what exactly are we evaluating with the Mindset Study?
Mm-hmm. So the Mindset Study, I think, is really unique in clinical trials for new Alzheimer's treatments. And that's because it is repeating the essential parts of a study that's already been completed. The FDA and other regulators require 2 positive studies to approve a drug. And this prior study actually showed benefit in the way on the endpoints the regulators like to see them, on 2 co-primary endpoints, which is what the FDA and other regulators require. So we're just repeating that study. There were 2 active doses in that one. We're repeating it with just the higher dose, which worked better and was just as well tolerated. And so it's a 6-month trial. Patients on donepezil who are randomized either to RVT-101 or placebo for 6 months. We measure these endpoints that the FDA requires, and if we get the same results as the prior study, then we believe that the regulators will likely approve this product. So it's unique in that way, in that there's already one of the 2 studies done. And just in case patients or potential participants are wondering, even if you're randomized to placebo in the first part of the study, there's an extension to the trial that gives everybody the active drug. So you're guaranteed to get active drug if you remain in the study.
Mm-hmm.
So Doc, talk to us about some of the limitations of the current products on the market, and how can RVT-101 provide hope for patients and caregivers?
So the advent of treatments really revolutionized the way people think about this illness. That's when people first started talking about it as an illness rather than just senile dementia. However, unfortunately, the treatments that are available today do not cure this disease, nor do they stop its progression. What they generally do is provide some improvement relative to where the patient starts out, and that improvement remains for as long as people have been able to measure it. But unfortunately, people who aren't treated decline, and people who are treated also decline. So this doesn't cure the illness, it simply makes patients better than they would be if they weren't on treatment. And so if they go off, they will often decline back. So it's important for people to stay on. So because the current treatments don't cure the illness, it's very important to add on treatments which improve on what the current treatments do. And that's what this first study indicated that RVT-101 does. It adds to the efficacy of donepezil.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the patients who are involved in the clinical trials and clinical research. Can you take us through the evaluation process or the screening process for the Mindset Study?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this study is of patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease who are on donepezil. There are some other requirements as well. You have to be in generally good health, healthy enough to complete the trial, and other things that you would normally expect for patients who are going to participate in the clinical trial. And so if your viewers or their caregivers know someone who is interested in participating in the trial, they should go to www.alzheimersglobalstudy.com. And there we have what we call a pre-screener. Mm-hmm. So they'll be asked questions like, are you on donepezil? What's your age? And so on. And if you pass that, then you could be eligible for the trial, and you'll be referred to a place where the trial is taking place. And they will explain more of the details of the trial to you. If you're still interested, you'll sign a consent form, and then there are laboratory tests and so on to confirm that you're in reasonably good health and can likely to be able to complete the trial. So that's the process, and the first step would be to go to this alzheimersglobalstudy.com and go through the pre-screener.
And so, Doc, where are the testing sites? Are they, obviously by the name of the website, I take it it's a global study, but how many sites are there?
So there are going to be approximately 175 sites in the trial, with about 60 sites here in the U.S. So there are quite a large number of sites in the trial. This is a relatively large Alzheimer's trial, and there are a large number in the United States here. So the odds are pretty good that patients will be relatively close to a site. And in some of these sites, we actually can provide free transportation back and forth. So even if people have a hard time getting out of their homes or traveling, fairly long distances, they should be reassured that, we can help them with that in many cases.
I think that's critically important, especially in the Alzheimer's community, because, we see other trials that are going on that we're involved in, and it's usually the patient can get themselves there, but with Alzheimer's and dementia, it's not that way. It's the patient, and then the caregiver has to be ready to provide transportation to and from, and everyday life gets in the way, so providing that transportation is, I think, critical.
Yeah, that's something that we were just speaking about with Llewellyn, because we also talked with her about the importance of participating in clinical trials. And she said that not only is it important for patients with Alzheimer's to participate in the trials, but you also need to have a caregiver who's able and willing to take you to your appointments all throughout the trial. And so it's great to hear that your trial is providing transportation to those who may need it.
So Doc, let's talk about the fall off for a minute. You talked about other therapies on the market and patients dropping off of therapy. But what are some of the causes of that? Is that side effect or?
Yeah, I think, people change their medications for many reasons. But as I said, the currently approved treatments, and as far as I can tell, all of the treatments that are in development don't cure this illness. We will likely end up, at least for the short time, treating Alzheimer's like we treat hypertension or diabetes, other chronic diseases of aging, with multiple treatments, each of which provides some benefit and in sum total turn a progressive disease into a chronic illness. I'm sorry, what's your question again?
So, well, the drop off of compliance.
So because the disease is progressive, when people start, they experience an improvement, at least on average, but the disease is still progressing. And so when they decline back to about where they started, sometimes the caregivers or the patients think, well, the drug's not helping me anymore, I'm back the way I was when I started. But when they discontinue treatment, then they worsen from there. And what's happened is the disease has progressed, the drug is keeping them better than they would be, and then when they discontinue, they realize, gee, this drug was helping me, and then they go back on. I mean, that's a common story, but people, of course, discontinue for various reasons. Yeah.
So in RVT 101, will it be indicated for early stage? Where do we fall? When people are watching the show and they hear about this new product coming to market from Axovant Sciences, is this an early stage?
Yeah. So one of the things about drug development that probably many of your viewers are aware of is it's a somewhat risky undertaking in general. Well, one of the goals of our company is to reduce the risk as much as possible. So as I mentioned earlier, we're just repeating a study that was already, in our minds anyway, successful. And that was done in mild to moderate Alzheimer's patients. So that's who we're including in the Mindset trial, mild to moderate. So if you have a patient who's severe, they wouldn't qualify for this particular study. Or if a patient really is in the prodromal stages and doesn't really yet have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, they wouldn't qualify. So I think there are about 70% of patients would qualify for our trial. But one of the interesting things about the mechanism of action, increasing acetylcholine in the brain, is that appears to help many different kinds of dementia and all stages of dementia. So I think in due course we will conduct clinical trials in more mild dementia, in more severe dementia, and in other forms of dementia as well. And in fact, we have an ongoing study in dementia with Lewy bodies.
Mm-hmm. So I understand that you're using RVT-101 in combination with Aricept, and Aricept keeps the level in your brain, stops the drain, and RVT-101 adds more. Will RVT-101 ever potentially be used on its own?
It has been tested on its own, and it appears to work better when it's given concomitantly with donepezil and probably other drugs that work by the same mechanism of action, though that's not been tested. And it's because of just exactly what I said. If you're putting more in, it doesn't help that much if the drain's wide open. You're never going to fill the bathtub.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Doc, so talk to us a little bit about what's next, RVT-101, and then at Axovant Sciences, what's on the horizon?
Yeah, so we have, as I mentioned a minute ago, we have also a program in dementia with Lewy bodies. This is an earlier program because this RVT-101 hasn't been tested in dementia with Lewy bodies, so this is what we call a phase 2 study rather than phase 3, the final phase for the mindset in Alzheimer's disease. The reason we're quite optimistic that this drug will be helpful to patients with dementia with Lewy bodies is that patients with DLB respond much better even than Alzheimer's patients to cholinesterase inhibitors. So blocking the drain is actually much more beneficial to these patients with DLB than with AD. And since RVT-101 adds more acetylcholine, we think that it will benefit these patients with DLB even more than with Alzheimer's disease. So that's an earlier stage program. However, if this study works, the FDA has told us, because of the design, that we might well get approved for DLB as well as AD. And the studies could both be included in our application to FDA.
I want to follow up with the FDA here, because I know that the FDA is really looking at organizations and really trying to fast track some of these therapies to market. Are you able to take advantage of some of the fast track applications that the FDA is putting out there?
We have not applied for those yet, although we may. We've certainly discussed it. And I can tell you that we've had many interactions. We're a relatively young company. We've had many interactions with the FDA on this mindset trial, the AD trial, and the Headway DLB trial. And they have been extremely helpful to us. They have really gone out of their way to give us the benefit of their advice. And of course, I've had a lot of experience in Alzheimer's drug development, but they know what everyone is doing, and they have the most experience of anyone, of any organization. And so they have been remarkably helpful to us, and we're very grateful for that.
Well, Doc, on behalf of our families and the entire Healthio 360 community, I want to thank you today for stopping in. It's a very exciting time for Axovant Sciences, and we greatly admire the work that you and your team are doing over there. So thank you again for stopping in. I'd like to thank our viewers this afternoon for tuning in, and I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this all possible. Remember, all of our episodes can be viewed on demand at healthio360.com, and our podcast can always be found in the iTunes store. Well, Courtland, we're about social media, so why don't you share our efforts there?
Well, we're all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and we use the hashtag #RealStories when posting. We'd greatly appreciate it if you would do the same. On behalf of Dave Duplay, myself, and the entire Healthio 360 family, we'd like to thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week when we're chatting with Susan Bratton of Savor Health.